of my daughter had a hockey tournament, so I went to the hockey tournament. And then we got a call from my sister and she said, oh, yes, I want to send something over.
Calling to the Stormwater Bylaw Working Group meeting for June 9th, 2025. I'm gonna do a roll call. John Salo,
Yes.
Josh Levy, Sue Barber, Janine Hellway.
Ooh, might be somebody coming.
Oh, there we go.
All right, start the thing over.
Are you gonna do a roll
What
call?
happened? We were missing you guys.
We were chatting, sorry.
You were.
There was a lot of traffic in the parking lot.
I've got to do a roll call. We called the meeting to order. John Salo,
Yes.
Josh Levy,
Here.
Sue Barber,
Here.
Janine Hellway. Mr. Hall. Mr. Tom Ryder. Here. Deb Anderson,
Yeah.
Tripp Hayes. Joe Ponder, and Kevin Keenest. All right, so we have a quorum, we have a meeting. First issue is approving the minutes. Do we have minutes?
We don't have
No
minutes from the last meeting yet. I apologize.
I'm so sorry.
I
Try to get
I
from
sent came
the.
on a
I
meeting
was-
last week.
I went on
For that.
went to the convention last week and I could not. I
We
could
do
not.
all week long with 9 minutes through.
Yeah. I know, there's such page turners. I don't really know how.
Okay, so we have no minutes, and so the next thing up is the. I'm sorry.
The,
Agenda is the.
just comments from legal.
Continuing
Yes.
on.
You can-
Oh, thank you. Comment, except me, sorry. Draft bylaw comment review with town council.
Yeah,
Chrissy, thank you for coming.
Glad to be here.
Have at it. Here we go.
hold please,
Boy.
hold please. I'm just trying to get the document to come up. In, did you that? I didn't, I was very demanding, so it's now revolting against me, so that is currently what I'm fighting with, but here we go, okay. I just need to share my screen. Should be good. Share screen. Don't see anybody else online yet. Share
IT fixed
screen.
the network, so it's connected now. And the last time I blamed it on you.
So it wasn't
Well,
Alan-
It wasn't
Alan's
Alan's. Yeah. Well, it was, but we,
She's
Are we in deliverables presentation?
We're in deliverables documents.
Document.
Presentation is a
Thank
whole
you.
different thing.
Document. Thank you.
All righty.
It's Article 7, right?
Article 7, so this is the reformatted, formatted document. I
Does
think I
that
said that right.
version have the comments? Somehow I
I think I'm
couldn't
in
get
line. Yeah,
get the comments to,
not in the word.
Cool.
On the
Pull up.
view,
you have to hit something special to,
French, you mean?
at the top, you should see something that says view. I'm seeing it on my side, it's not.
Oh, okay, I'm not.
At the top of the document, top of the options at the top, you have file, home, insert, design, layout. You want to go to where it says view, which should be like the second or third one from the far right. On mine, it's further over, but you might
Are
not
you
have a
on,
developer.
you on Word?
I'm not sure. Yeah, no, I'm in jury.
Are you?
Those-
Do you open it
That might
in
be the
Word?
PDF. That might- Is that the PDF?
It's not on the PDF, it is in the Word
Yeah.
document.
No,
You on the Word document, do?
I don't know, it's just not, I'm just not viewing. But go ahead, I don't want to keep this.
Oh, you might. If you open it in Teams, you have to open up the app.
In the SharePoint, you have to open an app.
Okay,
Because when you open something in something like Teams, SharePoint, Zoom, whatever,
right,
it's what's called it's a light version, it's the online version.
okay.
you
It's
have
not
an
the full
extra
version.
copy of that.
I'm not making any revisions.
Okay.
Well, but
I mean, if there are any extra copies of
Oh,
the copy that has all the comments. that you passed out last week to us or.
Do you need
week
one?
before.
Is that the one in my office?
I gave you a
Yes.
copy. I got
Yeah.
it.
Do you want me to go get one? Do you need one?
Sure. We got one.
All right.
Up to,
I'm going. It's dark in that hallway though. I'm kind
First one,
be
John?
brave.
So like an
Scary.
escort.
of, no, I'm okay.
Right,
Okay,
can we return, town council charges by the hour?
he really just loves to hang out. with us.
15
True.
minutes.
I'm so glad you're here.
It's free after seven.
That's right.
Do it.
All right,
He does it because he has nothing better to do on a Monday
So,
night.
I
really.
don't.
So,
Um,
I just want to check this.
should we start?
Yes,
All right.
so am I just going to the legal comments and
Sure.
if you want to
And
tell
I
me where you'd
think,
like me to go
so
to?
I think 7.5, if my notes are accurate, we got through 7.4 at the, we broke it,
Is your,
7.4 last time, so
Yeah.
pick it up right where we left off.
7.5.
you want to blow that up a little more too, or is that good?
Yes, I can. Okay,
Unless you want me to open up mine. Were you able to take good notes when you were in your car?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's tough driving, but I mean.
Does anyone
I
else
was
need
parked
one?
in the library.
I'm good.
oh, yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for saving those, because if I had to go back to my office and find them. Sure, I would.
Right, 7.5.
I don't get rid of anything. I have
I don't either,
the
that's the
first
problem.
email when I started here 15 years ago.
Oh.
So I've gotten rid of
Administration.
no email.
And you guys want me to make this bigger? Is that better?
Great.
Can we blow up the whole screen?
Great. So yeah, first comment from me in 7.5 is just, we've got, and I think we touched on this last time, but we've, for the issuing authorities, it could be any one of any number of different boards, and just whether, I guess, raising the question of whether we wanted to establish a hierarchy of who would be the issuing authority, if a particular project needs to go to multiple boards.
It should be consistent with the previous language.
I think that's right. I think that was only comment in 7.5. 7.6. Provides for adoption of regulations to further the purposes of the bylaw, which is great.
Mhm.
Only question we raised here is whether it, the appropriate person or board or department to adopt the regulations should be the select board, or whether it should be DPW director or town engineer, or it certainly could be the select board, but they're otherwise not real active participants in this bylaw.
Is it Joe Pontus?
I don't think he would be here tonight.
No,
Mondays was
he
the-
just flashed.
Oh.
Is it not here?
I'll go find him.
Yes, okay,
So I don't have a major rooting
Oh,
interest as to
okay.
who this should be,
Okay.
but I just raising the question of whether the select board is the right board to adopt the regulations.
There's Joe with the hand up.
Yeah, got it. Coming, Joe, hold please. Almost there. I just promoted you to, there you go.
There we go.
Here you go. Sorry, dear.
Hi, Joe.
hey, Joe.
Hi, guys. I've been here the whole time. It's just, tough to be recognized.
Oh.
Hello, Joe.
You really gotta, do something like, send up flares or something.
Well, that's why I raised my hand.
Yeah, nice. Well done. Okay.
If the select board can give it back, I mean, to DPW, right, or,
I assume if it remains the select board, I would have to assume that the DPW is going to be doing the lion's share of the
Yeah.
work to get them to the select board, so it's not a major difference, I don't think.
Yeah, our only, I guess I thought my understanding of the way it had to really work was that the bylaws is something that needs to be voted on by town meeting,
Right.
because that needs to be the public input and all that. And then the regulations, in order to, so that they are malleable enough for us to be able to respond effectively to changing laws, regulations, EPA desires, the change of wind, I don't know, whatever
Right.
makes it, we needing to change something in a regulation or how we go about doing something. Having it go through the select board was preferred just because it doesn't require a town meeting to make it happen. So it's not such a long
Absolutely.
time in between. If we could have somebody else approve it, meaning DPW director or something like that, I don't think we have a major,
Well, I think it should be, I think it should be a board, and I think the select board is a quasi DPW board in the absence of a DPW board, so.
Okay.
I mean, that's where
Okay,
I would.
Yeah, no,
prefer
that
to
wasn't-
go through the select-
that was not me expressing a strong preference to
Yeah.
move it, just
Yeah.
asking the question.
Yeah.
yeah,
So that
it's
way-
definitely something that we would, that engineering and or DPW technically would be bringing to the select board saying, these are the changes we want to make and why, and we're definitely the ones that would.
And if there's
direct it,
any
but-
challenges to something, it should be a board, not an individual.
Really, I just want you
Here's-
to say yes, change it.
Well, I'm talking about a decision.
Yeah.
Like an authority to say, okay, it's applied incorrectly or it's applied correctly, eventually.
So are we okay to continue with a select board?
Yes.
Although I have to change it to select board,
Yeah.
not board of selectmen.
Can I ask
Right,
you a
right,
quick
yes, please
question?
change.
No,
While we're on this. The board of select board.
Yeah.
I shall adopt, but they don't really periodically amend, it's amended and then adopted, then to the select board. To adopt, is that correct? The select board
Well,
really
this is
isn't.
for the regulation, right? So like we have, for example, street permit procedures.
Right,
And from time to time, we bring it to the select board to amend. It doesn't go to town meeting because it's not,
Right,
it's not
right.
part of it.
yeah, I think you're saying that, I think or at least what we're trying to get across is that it might be amended or changed, and we don't necessarily have a new set of regulations every time we vote on it. We might change one or two things in it to address an issue or something. like
so
that.
say if DPW is changing the regulations at any one point in time. It's still considered. I know it goes to the select board with the change in regulations. But it's okay, say, it's appropriate to say that they will amend and adopt. the
Yes.
Select board,
Yes,
okay. Okay,
I believe so.
We're good.
So am I okay with that comment? We're good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so I'm gonna
Moving on.
shut that comment off. Give me just one moment. I'm going to. Hello? No? What am I doing here? Where am I? Resolve thread, there we go. That's what it's- Okay, where is this?
Great.
And I will just change the word of selectmen to say select board. That two words or one?
2 words.
Okay,
Great. Section 7.7.
Yeah.
Stormwater assessment.
yeah,
This one was interesting to me. Because I'm not sure it's necessary. I think it would be possible to take it out, but if we think there's value in leaving it in, I just wanna maybe take a pass through, and I haven't done this yet.
Mhm.
And just, just confirming that it's got everything in it that should be in it, and my
Okay.
comment here is. Really based on the fact that we have a stormwater utility be already in effect in town.
we do.
And we set that up and started to charge it without
Having it in the bylaw.
having it in the bylaw.
Right, I think we were trying to bridge the gap of we didn't have it in the bylaw and maybe
Yeah.
just having it in there for awareness purposes, I guess.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Does it codify it by doing this?
Well. The only danger that I see is if we're doing it already. And
Oh,
we're doing it already without the bylaw. I just wanna make sure that everything that's in section 7.7 is absolutely 100% consistent with. Everything we've done to document and start charging a fee in the absence of the bylaw. So I just wanna compare notes with what we've got on the books already.
Do you think we want to get Dave Davison's opinion too? Because I know he's very
Yeah.
concerned.
I was gonna suggest that.
Yeah,
So,
he's the finance director.
and I know that
He's a
these,
deputy.
Yes.
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the. Charging of this fee has been relatively uncontroversial in town, or at least it's going relatively smoothly, no?
Because
So super fun.
Well, it doesn't involve, hasn't come across my desk at least.
Hysterical.
Mm.
Oh, that was
So-
cute.
Maybe we should just talk outside of this meeting about
Sure.
what, how it's going. Because how it's going might influence what we wanna put in here, and you've likely participated in your drafting, but I just wanna make sure I know.
Sure.
How it's going so far,
Okay, everything's just ducky.
and I know these are getting challenged in other towns, so. Just wanna make sure we've got it all in, and, okay, so that's the general question about whether we need section 7.7. Only other question is 773? Is this the right place for 773? Because every 771 and 772 are talking about the charging of the fee, the utility fee,
Mhm.
and 773 is encouraging.
So 773 in there, the low impact development stems from the results of our EPA regulated assessment we had to do in year 3, I believe was a permit, 2 or 3, I can't remember which one specifically. But they required us to look at all of our bylaws in town that have anything remotely to do with stormwater. That includes the bylaw, any conservation planning, anything, to ensure that none of them are conflicting and or that they have a mechanism to encourage and support low impact development without being contrary to each other. Now, it didn't, the mandate from the EPA wasn't that you do anything about, it was just do an assessment to see if any of them do, to see where they could be better. Better in line, I'm sorry, I'm really tired this week, the words are hard, but better in line with each other. And then you kind of got graded if it was if it was an adequate section or good or better than expected type thing. It wasn't like a numeric thing, it was
But
just.
I don't think the question is, do we need it? Because I think it's where it's placed. I think it really belongs over in 7.1.
Yeah, it might need to be someplace
Talk about
else.
the content.
Yeah, it might need to be
Point.
someplace else, but the
Just-
point of the topic itself, and why we wanted the topic, and why we needed the topic, and it was to
Yeah.
be compliant with EPA
Yeah.
requirements of the permit.
My recollection is that at some point, we were considering whether a low impact development could enable some sort of abatement on the stormwater.
Exactly.
But that
that's what I
never
was
really
thinking,
got
yeah.
into it, yeah.
Yeah, so because we don't have, we also, the stormwater assessment does not currently have an abatement program assigned to it, it is. Slowly coming into development, because if people have done above and beyond what is basically required in the bylaw, then. They should get credit for
Right.
doing more work than what's required, but we don't currently have that in place yet. So the low impact development. Component to it would be like if you're doing. Heads and shoulders above your neighbors on with more stormwater. Mitigation on your property, maybe that would give the stormwater assessment.
But
Ruler,
but if we're not,
some more routine.
Okay, that's-
Yeah, I don't know what else to say, like that.
no,
Now,
exactly,
yeah.
I think we're not ready to put that, or at least it's not in the language right now, to have an abatement, right?
Oh, no, we're not ready to have that in there, and I do not want to put that until Dave comes up with a good.
So then maybe it's worth.
If he
So
okays my.
think about, so I could, I guess, resolve this thread by. Thinking about. Finding a different location for 7.
Is there a
Yeah,
topic,
sorry.
is there an area that you think would be more fitting, a more, one of the headings? Cause I think we had it someplace else
Yeah,
originally,
we
and we
talked
moved it
about
around
putting it
about
up.
4 times,
Yeah.
so,
The content
Yeah,
of
somewhere where
the
we're talking.
plan,
yeah.
I was
Somewhere
somewhere
in-
in 710.
Yeah, somewhere in 710 is, I thought actually where it was headed.
I think.
So I'm happy to move it. Are
Okay.
we okay to move?
Yeah,
And when we get to 710, maybe we can.
I will move it
find a
right now.
happy home.
I'm gonna move it to 710, and so if it's not in the right place, like it should be moved up or down at some point.
Yeah.
Feel free to let me know at that point, but I'm taking it up right now and moving it if we are in agreement with that. 7.10. I'm just gonna put it as the first item, and then we can kind of move from there.
Great. All right, that was all I had for,
And let me just resolve the red while I'm at it, because that could be confusing.
I'm just asking a question while we're at this, under this 7.7.
Yep.
On 7.7.2. With the first statement. Talks
Municipal
about
authority.
the ability to establish a stormwater management authority. In a way, that's a little confusing because we're not doing that. That's, and we're basically,
Yeah, the municipal authority language is literally the language that Massachusetts gives us for why we can put the stormwater assessment in, so I just
okay,
lifted it
I
off.
mean,
of it.
it's, and this whole issue, I know, Chris, you picked up on it, is who's the permitting authority, who's the authority that potentially could create confusion, but if it's something that's just part of the discussion, that's fine.
no,
Yeah, no, I'm good with changing it if you want to, it's just literally I copied, I pasted
Yeah.
on what the state gave us.
yeah, no, if it's okay with the group, what I'll suggest is that I go through, we have a conversation about how it's going. Today, and I'll go through section 7.7.1, the introduction, 7.7.1 and 7.7.2. And just confirm that it's got everything there that needs to be there.
Okay.
If that's going to be the operative enabling authority in town for this fee going forward, even though we're already charging it already.
Yes,
Great.
yeah, I don't think we need to have it in a bylaw in order to charge it because the state of Massachusetts says we can.
Yeah.
However, we thought having it in here might assuage some of the.
I totally agree that it's helpful because it's gonna be easier for people in town who are being charged the fee to refer to the local bylaws as a reference point than trying to wade through the general laws and find chapter 83, section 16.
Yes,
Very educational.
And you said there's some challenges coming up, did you say that, or?
Yeah, I think that there are, I know at least one in another town that we work in. But it's not sort of categorical challenge to the whole fee. It's a challenge to the manner in which the fee has been applied to a particular property. So it's not. So, no, I guess I didn't mean to suggest that
The
there's.
whole
you
thing
know,
wasn't, okay.
It's a hotbed of litigation
Yeah,
everywhere.
she's been dealing with with a variety of scenarios, which I can understand how it, confusion on how to apply to certain lots. It's like Conservation Commission actually owning
part of
right
what
away
we're kind of what we're.
through the
attempting,
property.
yeah.
And they check their charge.
And they can, yeah.
Yeah, so they were getting charged like tier 5 and they really only belong in tier 2.
Yeah.
So kind of significant,
And
I'm
they
not saying
said
it's not.
lots of tears.
He actually was pretty, he's been very patient about it. It's still not fixed on his bill yet, so he's been very understanding, thankfully. So if he listens to this at any time, thank you.
Can I just as a defining question? I assume that we are not going to be defining a single stormwater authority in the bylaws. It's still gonna be,
Yes.
okay,
I mean, overall,
Right.
the stormwater authority, technically, the stormwater management authority is the DPW, like we
yeah,
are.
no, I'm fine,
But we're
with
not
that.
the ones that
I'm
are,
fine
we're
with
not
that.
solely responsible for every permit that potentially has. Stormwater.
See, that's why I raised the
I know,
question.
no, I
As
know.
soon as I saw that wording. it's
I know, I can
like, Are we
understand,
creating an authority?
yeah, I know, I can understand. Right,
Right.
but I just wanted to
I don't think we should.
further,
Or does
further the
Does it
question.
default to select board? That select board through DPW.
And it's
That's
stormwater
the
authority.
stormwater authority, I mean, what's the authority in the town?
I mean, it sounds like generally it's DPW is the old role.
There might be,
Yeah,
The super.
so this, the only thing that I think the first sentence, and I could be wrong legally, but when I read it, it says to establish management authority, which we have, which DPW is it.
Yeah,
So it's,
yeah,
they're just giving us the
yeah.
right to establish that in order to be able to assess the fee. Although they give us the right to establish that regardless if we assess a fee, but
Maybe it would be worth adding a definition to the definition section, just to clarify.
potentially.
All
Yeah.
the stormwater authorities.
Or yeah, just clarifying what it means, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, because we've got so many different terms that we use. Permitting authority, stormwater authority, you're gonna have to sort of clean that up a little bit.
So
And-
happy to make any adjustments after we discuss the part.
And when we're talking about stormwater authority, where are we looking right now? Or that was that?
That would be sentence
general.
1, 7.7.2. That
Okay,
first
got it.
sentence, Massachusetts municipalities are authorized under MGL to establish a stormwater management authority, empowering them to charge a fee to property owners.
Great.
I could probably find the official Massachusetts thing where it states that somewhere.
And that's good, because it's clear enough that we're talking about the stormwater authority, management authority, having the authority to charge the fee.
Yeah,
I think there's another place maybe coming up where we use stormwater authority,
Yes,
but it doesn't. It doesn't state clearly what this authority is doing in that particular paragraph.
Okay.
So I think we'll get there.
okay, 7.8,
7.8.
fantastic.
All right, my first comment was in 7.8.2. And it's just, this section says, the following non-stormwater discharges are exempt from the prohibition, provided they do not result in a violation of water quality standards and are not determined by the permitting authority to be significant contributors of pollution. The question here is, what do we mean when we say water quality standards in this paragraph?
I don't know, that was what was in the old bylaws, so I don't know.
I like your recommendation, actually,
So,
just sort of generalizing it.
well, so water quality standards as far as like you can't add like, well, I suppose PFAS would be about
Right.
pollution and stuff, but.
I mean, it makes it much more precise when you're focusing on the standard as opposed to. This, your suggestion, Chris, it just sort of generalizes it,
Yeah.
more of impact on. Because I mean, we're talking about. Allowable non-stormwater discharges.
Great.
I mean, I suppose like, yeah, I mean, water quality standards, it has to do with like the level of like lead and other things that are in the water. That's not necessarily a recognized pollutant, but it's not, we can't, like, we have to filter them out of the water, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm talking
We're
about.
talking about minor stuff here in this list,
They do.
and we just want to be sure that somehow they're not causing a problem.
Yeah, so like if you flush a line that's a lead line pipe, you potentially are introducing a ton of lead into the water source, the water
So what does that mean by flows from?
Table. Not that I think you would, or like if you're, I mean, air conditioning condensation.
Right.
Was like, if you had antifreeze in there, not that antifreeze is, I mean, that's a pollutant, I would think, because it's a chemical, but. I don't know that lead is considered a pollutant, it's. Not desired, and I don't want to drink it, but.
But if we go with our suggestion, right,
Well,
it's broad and
Yeah.
effectively within our discretion.
What about the,
Which I
There are
think,
MCL, discharge
Yeah,
limits.
Well, it also,
you really want to get into,
Contingency plan.
checking the
yeah,
runoff from irrigation
MCP,
for contaminants.
right, yeah.
If it's significant, then you've got a, Chris's language
Testing, right.
would give you a way to get at
Our
it.
fertilizers contaminant.
Yes.
you couldn't just delete,
So there'll be no.
provided
chance.
that they do not
Yeah, but we
result
don't
in
have
a violation of water
Well,
quality
yeah,
standards. We do. And they just have,
Right.
um,
But what does it
exempt
mean?
from prohibition and just are not determined by the permitting authority to be significant due to the pollution.
Well, that's actually my-
I got the wetland.
Go ahead.
I liked Chris's suggestion because it actually gets rid of the second part.
Okay.
It's not subjective
Yeah.
determination by the
Exempt
permitting
from being
authority
had.
anymore, it's just.
And that was my sort
Oh,
of second,
okay.
gonna be my
Okay.
second comment, which is not noted in the draft, but I don't know how, it's not clear to me how permitting authority comes into play.
I know,
Here.
it's confusing.
Because this is just, 7.8 is just a prohibition on discharge,
Illegal.
illicit, illegal discharges. There is no permitting happening under 7.8, as I understand it.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
7.8.2 also goes on to say, and are not determined by the permitting authority to be significant contributors of pollution. But I don't know that permitting authorities active here.
Yeah, it shouldn't say permitting authority,
Yeah.
it should say determined by the stormwater authority, so determined by the DPW, essentially. So I could say DPW if that was okay.
The reason why I like Chris's language is
Or-
because it just says, unless, provided that the source is not a significant contributor of pollutants, like, there's no subjective determination there at all, it's just, it is or it isn't.
It is, I mean, the only thing, this was the list that was in our original bylaw, so I just left the list and added a couple of other ones that might be something or things that we don't mandate, or that we don't look for, test for, wouldn't call somebody out on for type thing, you know?
Yeah.
But so is there a reason we couldn't just accept my
No.
suggested
Yeah.
change?
I
And
was just thinking
put
that.
a,
Get rid of
put
the
a
list?
period after. Well, and then delete the remainder of that, so provided they do not. Provided that the sources,
We wouldn't even need
that the
that.
source is not a significant contributor of pollutant to the MS4 drain system and the water is well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I like
I'm
that.
totally good.
I agree,
Colon.
I agree.
Yes, and it gives you a way to,
And do we have, and then do we have A through G or no?
A
Yeah.
through-
Yeah,
Wait,
the list
no.
is,
Oh,
the list is good.
Yeah, the list is fine.
Excellent.
okay, well, hopefully, let me.
Yeah, perfect.
One. Resolve thread, done,
Excellent.
okay,
All right, next comment is 7.8.3, and there's no notes in the margin here. Bring this from mine.
okay,
First sentence, the town reserves the right to inspect, monitor, and test any premises suspected of discharging to the MS4 in violation of the bylaw. This comment's gonna recur a couple times between now and the end of the bylaw,
Yeah.
but I always worry when a town tries to award itself a right of entry on the private property
Mhm.
in a bylaw. And
Okay.
when I say I worry, I actually think we can't do that or
Okay. Yeah.
should do that. If we ever need to go on a private property to inspect, we're typically going to go get a search warrant.
Okay.
There are a couple exceptions to that. Joe Prondak can go on to conduct inspections as long as he's got an open building permit. I think Conscom has the right as long as there's open
Yeah.
owner conditions. But those are,
Or if there's enforcement.
yeah, but those are all provided for by general law. So we can't, I will always advise not to try to include in a bylaw the ability to walk on a private property without a search.
so Joe Prondak will always be able to inspect, monitor.
As long as there's an open building permit application, yeah.
Joe, are you okay with that? Unmute.
Yes, he is, yes, he's not, yes,
What
yes.
about Board of Health?
Yes. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Housing code,
Yeah.
sanitary code, those are, I think, are also provided by statute or at least state regulation.
Okay.
Chris, are you comfortable with the other two sentences in that section? So if the town identifies an illicit discharge, then,
Yes,
okay,
yeah, those are good.
So remove the first sentence,
Remove the first one.
gotcha. Done,
Thank
so,
you. Okay, that's
These are
all,
big bucks, okay, good.
all in section 7.8,
Under
moving on to
enforcement,
7.9.
that, what, the right to enter.
General comment about 7.9 is that a lot of the early parts of this section seem to me to be duplicative or partially duplicative of section 7.4.
Mhm.
In 7.4, we itemize, and we talked a lot about this last time, but we itemize the activities that are subject to the bylaw.
Mhm.
And then in permits, we're saying what needs a permit, and they're pretty close to the same things. And I just wonder if we might. So it's both duplicative, but it's also duplicative, but removed from 7.4 by 5 or 4 sections. So I just wonder if there's a way to sort of combine 7.4 and 7.9 in a way that doesn't have us doing. Again, repeating all of the things that the bylaw is applicable to and that needs a permit. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Would you, would another option be just keeping the permit section and just saying as described in
So is it
7.4.1 and not
Simple.
listing it here?
Applicability.
I might go 7.4 activities subject to this bylaw. And then afterwards, try to sneak. This first part of 7.9 in over there, and to say all of those things that are subject to the bylaw need a permit. Because if you look at 7.4. You know, we say any increase in impervious coverage greater than 25% of existing impervious footprint.
Impervious, yes.
Yeah, we repeat the same thing again in the first paragraph, so 7.9.
Right.
Because there's no need for it to appear twice. And the fact that it does appear twice, but, you know, several pages later in the bylaw, I think is just a possible source of confusion.
Right, in 7.4.4, we say no permit required list. And then 7.9 we find permits. So maybe they do, I mean. Do we call section 7.4 applicability and permits? And
I'm sorry, what was the other section?
4.4,
Yeah,
7.4.1, it's got the
Yeah, no, I got
same
that.
three
Yeah.
points.
We could call 7.4 activities requiring a stormwater permit. Or that's off the top of my head, that's not meant to be definitive, but. I guess I just want to confirm, just the comment makes sense that it looks. Do people agree that it looks to be possible to sort of consolidate 7.4 and 7.9?
Well, let me just give a little slight counter
Sure.
to that, because I agree with everything you said. But if somebody is looking at this document, trying to find their way through it, and they go to permits, when am I gonna need a permit? Then bingo, you've got the 3 points laid out, even though they're being repeated. Some readers, you know, may kind of use this document to focus on certain things that
so
they're
they may
interested
skip
in.
that
So,
first
so
section
does
and
it
go to
hurt
permits.
does it hurt anything outside of being redundant and
well, yeah, because
repetitive?
if it's in many places, it makes you read this document wondering where the other piece is. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, you know, it's sort of an Easter egg hunt. You know, just go find things. So we had it, permit should be in all one section. I would say.
So 7.4.1, I am not officially changing anything at the moment, however, I would like to add. I would like to change, if I change this wording, I can change it back, so I'm not gonna, I haven't saved anything at this time, but I can undo. If we change it to this.
And I guess one suggestion, and we don't have to do it this way, but I could take a crack at combining the two sections in a way that combines them and eliminates any duplication. I wouldn't want to do that on the fly here, but if the group wanted me to, I could attempt to do that and produce the draft in advance of the next meeting.
Wednesday.
Yeah,
That gives you tomorrow.
well, it gives you less time, you guys less time to review it, but I could do that tomorrow if.
Any other meetings still on?
That's.
What title
Yeah.
would that
Yes.
section, what would it
The
say,
17th,
if you combined it?
Wednesday's not the
Tuesday.
17th.
Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Something along the lines of
We have one Monday,
activities
Tuesday,
that
and then
require a
Wednesday.
stormwater.
I have this Wednesday.
Oh,
I'm gonna speak for-
yeah,
Whatever
because
the
there's really
17th
not
is.
much else in that.
That's
Now,
a
if you look at it,
That's next-
the 7.9 thing is,
So Kim, do you? Kim's been, like, she knows this. Bylaw, better than anyone else.
I try to, but it's
Look
really
at my
not. as-
calendar, this is my work calendar.
Okay,
I'm out of talking with the meeting
I
schedule.
don't know why.
You don't know why it says that we have a meeting Wednesday?
I
Oh,
know.
I had a meeting down for next.
it's next one.
I did
Next
too.
But my,
This is this week.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look at my, this is
I
my
think those
work
are previous
calendar.
ones. I have no idea. I can fix it for you after the phone.
Does it not say that there's a meeting on Wednesday?
But it's a week from Wednesday.
I'm just not coming
No.
anymore.
Oh,
I'm just not gonna come.
It's on the 17th, right?
Come on.
So are we not meeting on the 11th?
What day do you have it?
I have one on Wednesday.
This
We
week?
don't have a meeting on the 11th, I believe it is the seventh, we discussed the, our
It's
last meeting,
Tuesday.
it's the 9th, the 17th, and the
She's-
24th.
Yeah.
She's talking about this meeting right here on the 11th that was sent out. But that's not on the, that's not scheduled anymore. Like everyone got this one.
Oh.
On
That's
the
good
11th.
news.
And I also didn't want to suggest that I take the drafting of those two sections
Cause that's
off. of
why
your
I.
guys' schedule. If you want to take a crack at it.
And then-
Well, this is my crack at it at this point, so hold on one second here.
And then,
And then the next one I have is Wednesday, the 18th.
yeah.
My
I got-
apologies,
I got that
give me
too.
one moment
It's Tuesday
here.
the 17th.
Yes,
Okay, not
Yeah.
according to mine.
but you got. You.
Is that someone
Like the
else's
last
calendar?
last meeting we scheduled the 17th,
I know.
and then, but the 18th was already on there, but that's, erase it.
Debbie, I'll
I'm
call you
sorry, I
tomorrow.
really am sorry. I
I'll
hit
call you.
enter way too fast when I tried to do it really, I tried to put that in the calendar really quick and I shouldn't have done that. So this is my attempt at combining those two sections. Let me just unload because that shouldn't be open. So anyone proposing construction or land work that meets any of the following thresholds must comply with this bylaw. New construction, the three of them, new construction, land disturbance, and new construction or additions that exceed 25%. And also require approval under one or more of the following. The wetland, under conservation, board of appeals, zoning, I guess, planning board, and then, or other permitting authorities identified in this bylaw. No one may begin construction or land disturbance activities such as clearing, grading, excavation, or redevelopment if they meet these thresholds prior to obtaining a permit as required. Obviously, I'm repeating myself a lot, but please move or take out words. How does that sound for both of them, and we remove the permits section?
Well, not the
I
whole
can't-
section, just the introductory 7.9, right? I think this looks good.
Okay.
I just want to understand, the only thing that be removed is the beginning of section.
Yeah, the section that had the repetitive, yes. How do we feel about this language?
I like it.
It captures everything.
Okay,
All right,
So
so
there's that.
so going through a potential permit that comes through, like if someone's doing a tear down. That's new construction, so it will start them into the process. If someone's coming and doing a small addition, but they're adding. Fill material that could. Change the grade towards their neighbor's property, that would be
Mhm.
the permit, that would go through.
But
the
if they're
permit
tearing down to the foundation,
process. So. I don't know,
that was our
It-
problem.
yeah, I know you went through that.
Yeah.
Before.
I can comment on that.
Yeah.
So tearing down to the foundation is, because it exceeds 50, removing more than 50% of the shell, it is considered new construction. So it falls into that category of new construction.
Is that a building code
No, that's
definition
in our
or-
zoning bylaw.
In the zoning bylaw, okay.
Should that be our definitions too?
Mm,
And before you delete that, Kim, I have a question about the last paragraph. Which I don't think. I think we don't want, no person, the last paragraph of 7.9.
So we don't want it in 7.4 where I just had it either?
We'll see, that last paragraph is one that is not duplicated in current 7.4. This is only in 7.9.
No, but I think Kim put that in.
I did put it in 7.4.
Okay.
You want me to move it back?
No, this is a question for everyone. Without first receiving an administrative land disturbance review or. a
Yeah, those
land
permit
disturbance
names were just,
from the old-
from another, no, from another permit. From,
Okay. No,
Weston or something. I
Okay,
forget.
just
Yeah.
confirming that those are not.
Yep,
terms
yep.
we use
And we
elsewhere.
weren't sure if we were gonna have a different permit or not, so we kind of left it as a,
Excellent.
please look at it and figure out if we're calling it something else or not, but. So I took that out and I just said, so I took out the word, I even took out in the other section, without first receiving a permit from. Or whatever I said, so without receiving a permit, I didn't say what the name of the permit was like it does here.
So Stormwater Authority will go away.
No, just saying that you have an administrative land disturbance permit or a land disturbance permit. From the Stormwater Authority, I just said a permit from, hold on, I can go back. Let me just get to that first. Let me go back to 7.4.
I'm getting busy.
You're getting this. I should have drank coffee before I got here. I changed it to say, no one may begin construction or land disturbance activities such as. The examples, if they meet these thresholds prior to obtaining a permit as required. By this bylaw.
Yeah.
I can take off.
Wait,
that's
wait,
this
no
bylaw.
person may be,
May begin, so in other words, you can't start doing anything until you have your permit.
yeah. If they meet these, no person may begin
If
construction.
you're doing any of these things, you can't dig a hole to put in a rose bush, you can't do anything until you get your permit.
That suggests that you could wait until the last minute before beginning construction to apply for this permit. But I think in a lot of these cases, we want them to be applying for this permit when they're before the ZBA or the planning board or the COSCO. Right, so it's
Could we just say something prior to without obtaining a permit?
without,
Yes.
yes, I think that's better.
Yeah,
Could we say without requiring the applicable permit? Does that help?
The applicable permits.
Yeah, because it could be a building permit, it could be a conservation permit, could be a zoning or planning permit. We don't, we're not, again, we don't have a specific stormwater permit that anybody's going to.
Well, the bylaw dictates what's required.
Okay. Just a thought.
No, but you're right, Joe, that. We're not requiring it, we're requiring, everybody correct me if I misspeak, but we're not requiring a. Independent permit under this section 7. Bylaw. We are merely requiring review of stormwater
mhm.
in connection with other permits that people otherwise need.
Right, review and approval.
I would say it differently. I think we're saying the same thing. I would say it's permitted activity
Yeah,
triggered by the stormwater thresholds.
So to Josh, modify the.
I would keep it like this because the bylaw dictates what's required.
Yeah.
And we have a section that says. I mean, this is there's a section 7.9 permits. What do we say?
Yeah. The only thing I would say on that, it says without obtaining a permit as required by the bylaw. This bylaw does not require a permit. It requires an approval by another board or another agency. Does not require, this bylaw does not require a permit.
Well, then, what
So
about
without
approval?
obtaining the,
Approval
Yeah,
pursuant to
Yeah.
this bylaw.
I like that.
Obtaining approval,
what'd you say, pursuant?
Pursuant to.
Okay.
I got one more. If they meet.
is it pursuant by this bylaw or pursuant to this bylaw?
Two. Pursuant to. Yeah. And I think if they meet these thresholds, it should be changed to. If they meet,
How about I take that out completely? Like you can't begin any of this until you get approval of the,
Well,
obtaining
yeah.
approval. Which is getting a permit. Like, we don't want them to do anything until
Right,
they get approval to do it.
so I think, how about this? No one may begin construction or land disturbance activities. Involving. Any of these thresholds. Comma, without obtaining approval pursuant to this bylaw.
So get rid of the clearing, grading,
I
excavation.
think
redevelopment.
so, I think so.
Because I think we were trying to prevent them from saying, oh, well, we're waiting for the permit approval, let's just clear out the land first. Like, let's like, take down all the trees.
But you can,
Because we're gonna be
but
doing
you
so.
can clear, grade, excavate, or. You can clear, grade, excavate to your heart's content, provided you are not. Installing drainage, moving more than 750 cubic yards of earth. Or increasing the impervious surface by more than 25%. So it's,
Well, land disturbance, addition, it could be a land disturbance involving the addition, movement, or removal of more than 750 cubic yards of soil. If you take down 15 trees, you're disturbing more than 750 cubic yards.
no, I agree, you're right.
you also can't do things in stages, right? Haven't we talked about
Correct,
that?
like we, somewhere in there, we have in there, like you can't
Segmentation.
phase it, you can't phase your project so that you
Mhm.
fall below any of these.
But it's
thresholds.
not, but if they meet, so if they meet these thresholds, suggests that you have to meet all of them. But if you meet any one, you're subject to the requirement that you obtain approval, so I think it's.
We already have a definition for land disturbing activities, so maybe we don't need the examples. Because they're already in the definition, right?
I believe so,
I mean,
but
it says, any activity including without limitation, clearing, grubbing, grading, digging, cutting, removal, and so on.
okay,
Right.
so land
But you-
disturbance activities,
Yeah,
hold on.
But you won't have to go back to the definitions to. Know that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
says the lawyer.
Mhm.
That's why we put them there.
So no one may begin construction or land disturbance activities prior to obtaining approval pursuant to this bylaw.
No one may begin construction or land disturbance activities. That meet. Any one of the above thresholds.
Yeah.
No one may begin construction or land disturbance activities that meet one or more of these thresholds. Prior to obtaining approval pursuant to this bylaw.
Good. Okay.
Not that you
So
really.
that doesn't get rid of our, like, conservation.
Is that
Yes,
just
it does.
an enormous?
No, just like
repetitive-
you can't start, you can't do anything
Right.
until
No one may begin
you meet
construction or
certain
land disturbance
criteria for us.
prior
So
to.
that doesn't negate that.
There was also an issue, remember that came up with 25% of the footprint itself, so they, remember Tom? They just, or Joe?
Yeah,
If they were going up,
Yeah,
up,
so,
up,
so
yeah.
the footprint remained the same, but, is that really increasing impervious when you put something on top of it?
right, and I think Joe and I had this discussion too, about. Like the footprint doesn't change, because, you know, so the 25% doesn't change as you go up.
Right,
And that's okay,
So that it doesn't, that didn't trigger or doesn't trigger.
okay.
This was a section, I think, Tom, you mentioned last time, we might potentially want to add a fourth bullet about, like regrading.
Close to the
Yeah.
property line.
Yeah.
And how to figure out the thresholds of that. And
I know the
the other
regrading is
question I
really
have too is
important.
like, what about facilities that already have 4,000 square feet of impervious area and they're. Should they, if they have a building permit, should they
But we can come back to that.
Yeah, so at what point should, they should, you know, we're seeing that, oh, we're adding more driveway in less than 25%. Of the building envelope, doesn't trigger the permit. So. There was a 4,000 square foot
Yeah,
threshold. that
They
was-
kind of let that left behind.
Yeah, 4,000 square feet. Like the old, the existing bylaw, there's a 4,000 square
Yeah.
foot threshold.
And that's how this fees is based on
And
too.
then, yeah, right. Right, so is there like an opportunity to put an applicability of those that are grading like more than a foot, within 10 feet of the property line, raising that up by a foot?
It would be good to, if you think that's deserving of. Review and approval, it would be good to have in this bylaw, but to that
How to trigger it?
runs, yeah, that sort of raises the question. That wouldn't otherwise require a review
Right.
from any other permit official or board. So how do you provide for review under this bylaw? We could do it, but it's a philosophical.
Yeah.
It's a philosophical shift from what the bylaw currently.
I mean, if they're going around and hand changing the grade on their property, so they don't have a big
Right.
machine coming out to do it, then they could get away with not getting a street permit, but potentially they would have a street permit because they'd have big machinery coming in regrading the lot.
I've seen driveways right up to the property line.
Yeah.
And that's something we could catch as the
Right.
permits are coming in. But if someone's doing some landscaping work,
Right,
maybe not.
But I'm just a quick question here. I guess we haven't really got into too much of the grading, but I think that's extremely important. With construction, with the plot plan, or, I mean, it has the contours or the elevations on it, right? So, imagine someone just 2 days ago, they were talking about a house on Manning, corner of Manning and High, that the elevation's gone way up on it, and all four neighbors are really concerned about it. I think that's a huge issue, and I think I mentioned before that I got a mud flooded basement, not particularly because of that, but the erosion controls went up too early, but there was higher elevation. So I just think that the grading somehow, and I think Joe's mentioned it too.
Some of it.
Yes, I have.
Good.
Some of it would be captured in the second bullet, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking some of it would be, right.
Yeah.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe so.
Construction of alteration of drainage system.
Under the 750 cubic yards.
Okay, just a quick comment. I did a quick non-scientific calculation, just because I know Sue at least asked at the last meeting, what does 750 cubic yards of fill look like?
Yeah.
It looks like, to me, 42 minivans, just so you know.
Okay, yeah, that's quite a bit.
That's a lot.
But that's, you know, people could bring in 600 cubic yards of fill to their property to get water to shed away from their property and displace it onto other people's properties. And there's not much we could do about that. And that displacement of water onto other people's property turned out to be a big issue in our stormwater meetings that we had throughout neighborhoods. Just, and it's going on right now. There's 2 houses on Gary
Yeah.
Road. They want to get up out of the water table, so they're raising the grade and they're gonna mound their properties significantly. So that water will no longer come onto their property, but will increase
Which
the,
2 are those?
74, both 74 and 80.
So the 2 ones under DEP and, yeah, they're both under us.
Yep.
Is it effectively filling a landfill? I mean, a landfill, a wetland. I mean, you're basically mounding so much that a neighborhood's water table, you've now mounded it. So it goes on to use this basically filled a wetland, even if it's not wetland. Well, you've changed the topography of the whole
Flood
neighborhood.
storage.
Joe, did you have a
Yeah.
comment?
This is not his seat right now, but yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
He took his hand.
Oh, you took it down, okay.
You did.
Maybe we want to review the 750 if that should be lower at some point.
42 vans.
42 minivans,
Did you
yeah.
hear that?
Honda Odyssey,
Oh, she was
not
right, yeah.
Siennas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
What is the threshold for likely requiring a street permit? In other words, like how much earth do you have to move around?
that has nothing to do with the street permit has to be
Yeah.
if heavy machinery is going.
No, I know,
over.
but, well, we talked, I think we talked last time about how nothing in the second bullet would necessarily would automatically trigger permit review from anybody, from somebody else. But Tom's response to that was, if you were moving that much earth, you would necessarily need a street permit, and we could capture the second bullet point
Yes.
that way.
And the street permit has not been mentioned in there either. This, yeah, correct?
But my question is,
Right.
how much earth less below 750 will you need to be moving around in order to need the equipment that requires a street permit for you guys?
Right,
That's kind of hard to determine because it would, anything that requires.
Just like minivans.
Yeah. Like minivan.
In terms of minivans. Yeah.
So the street permit would trigger any excavation. That would. We consider the trench, 3-foot trench, we have that in our street permit procedure, so technically. If someone's digging a test pit, they should be. Pulling the street permit. Do they, the Board of Health observes them and they're the quasi operator permit issuer of trenches. But anything that could have an excavator.
So if I, at my house, if I get a delivery of fresh loam from,
Yeah.
Joe Landscaping. And then I go over and I painstakingly hand shovel a bunch so that I have a mound next to my house, so everything goes down, away from my house and off to my neighbors. Cause I can't stand that. I don't need a street permit,
Right,
because it's not, I'm not using machinery or anything.
Yeah. I
So
know.
there's nothing that's gonna trigger that, other than the fact that they're adding height to their property to alleviate having their basement flooded.
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do we get
So-
that?
I know, I think that's a huge issue.
I'm gonna type something into the chat just so I don't have to speak it, and then a suggestion, and then once I forward it, you can
Right.
possibly look at that.
On a 1/4 acre lot, 42 minivans are filled.
Right, but what if I'm only doing it on my,
I mean,
Left
I'm
neighbor.
under 750.
because I like my
yeah.
right neighbor, but my left neighbor is kind of annoying.
Mm.
No, but I mean. Should we reduce it from 750 to? Is that such a high bar?
Is it too high?
Yeah, no one's gonna be like, I'm just doing 600 and it's still like,
I mean, can we say land disturbance that changes the grade of your property? I mean,
yeah, we did 8 inches,
We don't
4
wanna-
inches right before.
Yeah.
by
Well, we
more
don't
than
wanna
2
catch
inches?
every landscaper who's doing like some garden work or.
The mulch.
The mulch or,
Right, 750 is old. That's a lot.
Well, could it be the purpose to change the grade? So that would be land.
Well, yeah, actually, maybe what's your intent? Is it
Yeah,
to
are
shed
you
water into
trying
my
to-
neighbors?
Well, no, are you trying to change the
Chris, you have to
grade or are
solve
you
this
doing
right
like?
Well, they could say, well, because if I'm standing there and I had an option, they said, well, what's your intent? And my intent is just to make my yard look prettier. I wouldn't say my intent is to irritate my neighbor.
Right,
Well,
no,
no.
you're right, right, the licensing, thing, like you're.
Yeah.
You're,
You're clearly trying
your
to make
intent.
your neighbor pay for
right,
borrowing your letter and never returning it. I'm
but-
just saying,
right, the result of your activity is going to change the water flow.
correct.
I think I also added in here too, like, retaining walls within 10 feet of a property, which would block flow for that naturally go into a direction and
Right, but for that, they would potentially get their street permits because you'd be digging,
it would be digging.
right, you'd be excavating.
So is the question whether we should lower the 750 threshold?
Right.
All right, I gotta leave it to you, what's a good
Yeah,
number?
yeah,
I mean,
Between you and Joe.
right, I know, I think we need to figure that out.
I think we should
750.
limit it to 10 minivans.
Chris, how many vans, how many
Many-
vans you?
Yeah, we
own?
can take that minivan.
many-
10 minivans?
How much?
That's a lot.
We're gonna have 10
Right,
million.
we get in the vents too. The graham crackers and kids stuff.
Did you send something, Joe?
The
'Cause I don't
chariots
see
that
anything
you
in the chat.
continue to find
That's
from
right.
when your kids were
Yeah.
toddlers.
Still working it.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, so I mean, other than figuring out how we would capture it, because those things don't require a permit, if they're not putting any structure on top of it, they're just changing how the water comes off their property and with no,
Unless they're in our buffer zone.
So then
or
rather
unless
than,
they're really honest and wanna tell us.
rather than measuring the cubic yards, maybe
Oh.
this is a reference to the street permit. And say,
Any entity importing more.
I just hit
than-
that, I wasn't done.
Oh, okay, all right, we won't read it, you won't read it.
I hit enter by mistake.
All right,
Change
keep
the,
going.
okay, so,
So
but
250.
basically change the grading and or existing water flow of the neighborhood displacement.
Let me
So
just, let
250
me just
is the
finish,
native-
let me
Yeah.
finish what I was about to
All
type.
right,
Okay,
250, I think was the needed, for the minor
Property, the other day,
permits,
and the
right?
blue was
I like
over.
that.
Ooh.
And I was like, to my kids, I'm like, "Look, it's covered." Nobody on the panel got it.
Minor.
Yes.
The addition on site,
I was so proud, and they-
redistribution or
That's hard for you people.
export of fill
Yeah.
greater than 250 cubic yards. That's for Natick's minor stormwater permit. And
Well, at
then,
least, you wanna,
but do they require a independent stormwater permit?
When that, yeah, based on that, they may do.
yeah,
The
This is-
difference
they
between
do.
minor and major.
A street permit does?
well, Natick does,
Oh, native.
yeah.
A street permit only does if they're gonna use heavy equipment to get it there, but if I am a masochist and decide to do it by hand.
That's a
You
wheelbarrow
get a lot
count.
less.
Just out of curiosity, separate question, Tom. What are you looking at when someone applies for a street permit? Just,
We look at, pretty much that they're gonna be excavating within the right of way most of the time, or they're obstructing something in the right of way, such as a sidewalk, or they're driving over a sidewalk that may damage it. So obstructing, or excavation. So, like, for example, if someone was pulling a building permit, but they were not building a new house, but they had, you know, like a swimming pool. You know, the concrete trucks are going over, so we would have them pull a permit for, this, the $100 permit for going over the sidewalk, and then we would check that. Now, the building department already has them, you know,
Yeah.
in their sites already, but so if they didn't have to, if they had a concrete truck pouring a patio, we wouldn't necessarily see them right now, unless we,
so if you got a street permit application how difficult would it be for you
The
to
big snake is on.
measure the stormwater impact at the same time?
Yeah, so if we get in the street permit, or usually we review like what the building department's saying as well, and then we could say just need a street permit, and
You're
then
gonna be.
Joe would make sure that they follow a street permit. Well, it's actually in our software, that requires them to come and pull.
If there's no sidewalk, like some there's right away, you know, so it's
Yeah,
public right away, but there's no sidewalk, so it's just grass. And so they can drive anything. By the way, I love Joe's.
So any entity importing more than 250 cubic yards of fill so as to change the grading and or existing water flow of neighborhood displacement shall demonstrate by engineering analysis that no additional water will be shed onto neighboring properties nor the public drainage. system.
Yeah, that's good.
Can we bylaw that?
well,
I,
I thought.
that's,
Could we keep everything and then just replace the first part, the cubic yards with street permit? And the entity
it sounds
seeking
like,
a street permit must comply with these things.
Well, but.
it
are you
sounds
gonna
like the
keep
second part
street
is the regulation, but the first part is the the trigger.
yeah, this is both a threshold for needing a permit and the performance standard by which you will judge that permit, which is fine. It's just not what this is not the way we do it elsewhere in 741. That's not a criticism, Joe. That's just an observation. I like the idea. It's just a question of where we put it.
But the triggers though, in the first part, I think are good. The 250 and the
250.
changing of the grades,
Yes,
that direct flow away. But yeah, how do you,
but it also puts the onus on the project engineer. The builder's engineer, whatever, to do it. To demonstrate it,
demonstrate it?
and how they do it, that would be the regulations, right, like. The
Yeah.
numbers and what we're looking for.
Right,
And this is just off the top of my head, this is not probably even all that constructive, but I worry that we'll miss a lot of these and find out about them late, and we need reinforcing after the work has already been done.
Right.
And that's true of any number of enforcement things we do in town, but I guess if somebody wanted to do this in connection with a building permit, Joe would understand it. If somebody wanted to do it in advance of applying for a building permit and they didn't comply with the bylaw, it just seems to me like we're gonna be chasing people after they've already done that work. But again, that's not to say we.
And to me, I don't know how he said, so again, if I called up my local gravel place and said, hey, can you dump 250 cubic yards of loam on my front yard, and they do, and then I go around and I shovel it up. And I don't employ somebody to do it, but I don't know that this is, like, I'm just doing a little improvement on my yard. Why would you care? Why would I need a permit? I wouldn't even think to get a permit.
But that's 35 that's about 35 minivans, isn't it? The 250, 200, no, I know, less than that.
That's
Maybe
about 14
Yeah.
minivans.
14, okay, 14 minivans. So we do have that much.
But
ground.
yeah, I tried to write it so that, people who are just putting a new layer of loam over their lawn, 3 or 4 inches or whatever, and spreading it out over the entire property, but basically keeping the grading the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're fine doing that, but if you're
I
specifically.
almost wanna say, like, if you're changing the grade by more than 4 inches.
Yeah,
And
but
just have it that way, like,
But that's, depending on the size of the lot. can
Yeah.
Make a
Right.
difference.
Yeah.
So that's why I said changing the grade and or existing water flow.
I like that a lot.
I do too.
yeah, no, I like, after the 250 cubic, I get stuck on the 250 cubic yards. Because again, if I get a delivery of stuff in my yard, I quite frankly don't ask the guy, how many cubic yards are you delivering to me? I say, I need to do this and this is what I need, and they drop it off in my driveway.
Right, but why are you
I don't
doing,
live in Needham, so it doesn't.
but why would you do that? That's the question.
Water.
Why?
Yes.
Would you
Well,
do
like,
that?
so,
Why would you
Well-
get 250 yards delivered to your home?
well, eventually, well, right now I would do it because my lawn is a complete crap and I'm trying to redo my lawn, but
Right, so you're
But
not
it's
changing the
14
grade
million.
or displacing any water, so you're fine. We wouldn't be chasing
Your
you,
intent.
but if you
maybe
put,
I want you to chase.
if you put all of that stuff on one side of your property, so it prevents the water flowing down the hill behind you to go into your neighbor's yard, that's a different story. You're changing the grade of the water flow.
So,
It's so important to catch that.
yeah,
It's so important.
but the thing we're trying to avoid is the very last part, shedding water onto neighboring properties and the public drainage system.
Yeah,
So can that be, I mean, we're focused on the land disturbance and the 750 cubic yards, but that's the core of what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
Joe, Josh has pointed to the big three, the applicability.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the,
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, all right, another question would be, why just cubic yards of fill? I mean, in a weird way, couldn't this be a new construction? You cannot to build or survey or grade your construction project so as to to affect existing water flow or neighborhood displacement.
I guess I'm trying to think of it as me, like, I
Yeah,
don't know,
okay.
if
Yeah.
If I said to my husband, I'm like, okay, I want, I don't know, what do I want in my yard? I want so many things in my yard, but I wanna put a fire pit over here, but I want it to be like you climb up this, the king of the mountain here, and you climb up this hill to get to the fire pit. So we bring in a bunch of dirt and put it, and I want all of the water that comes out of the pit once I flush it with all the ash and the crap in it, I want it to go over here to, Joe next
that'd be a
door.
problem.
Joe next door, he can deal with it, cause he's a pain in my neck. But how would I, as a homeowner, know? That's a problem, that's a problem.
I still don't think you'd reach 250 cubic yards of doing, projects like that. My other part is that is any way of saying something like, and is applicable to the requirement of street permit. To connect it right away with the street permit here. Someone sees that, yes, this is something that we have to, pay attention to.
Joe, when I look at, remember the houses on Chestnut Street? We looked at two
Yes.
houses,
Yep,
they were built. They were built into, I mean, with a sill of 6 inches, they were built and like in the bottom of a dog bowl in the neighborhood.
yeah,
And like, should some of that language you just have sort of raise a flag, like you can't build or position a house here that will be scooping up water and putting it in your basement. Or onto the neighbor.
yeah.
I mean, I
I
think.
I
Why
think
don't
the
we
important-
find new construction?
think the important part is to keep it off of the neighbors and out of the street. I kind of like what you said a few minutes ago about just getting rid of the 250 part. And say, hey, you can't change the grade so as to displace or place.
Yeah, any
additional-
entity importing fill
Or
to
not just
change the
fill.
grade or the existing water flow of the disbursement, like why even have a cubic yard threshold, I guess?
Right,
Well, then,
Or you wouldn't even have to import the fill. You could go out and reconfigure
Right.
your yard and within
Yep.
what you've got, and move some from here to here and create the same product.
so,
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
important to link it to the street permit too, though, because that's.
so
So-
this isn't, just to point out the importance of this, I think there should be a permit. The street permit should enter in here that,
Yeah, so like any entity.
It-
Regrading or work requires a street permit that shall ensure that no water is shed on neighboring property, something like that.
I still think there should be some kind of measurement to it, because say if I get nervous and, you know, knowing that I know this is in the bylaw, because I've been working on the working group, and so I get nervous thinking, if 250 cubic yards weren't in there, I'd get nervous thinking, what happens if my landscaping people come over and put in mulch on, you know, is that gonna be affecting? I don't know, I think there should be some kind of measurement, some base.
Well. But we're measuring intent.
So when you get the plot plan
Mhm.
and you see sort of major grade changes that are being proposed, you're gonna see this trouble.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the
sure,
problem is
sure.
though, that when people are doing this, they don't necessarily submit a plot plan, because they don't need a permit for anything. There's nothing that requires a permit.
You would not typically
Oh.
require a plot plan for a street permit,
Okay.
is that correct?
We are, we do require, but it's on, right now, we're
You wouldn't have-
redeveloping the, what should be on the plan, and that's gonna be another, street opening procedures that's gonna come before the select board as well. Right now, it's on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and it's very hard to read, it doesn't have a lot of information on there, so. We are gonna require, more information on grading and, locations of,
I feel like the only, the applicable, it's applicable to any entity. Changing, any entity or any land disturbing activity, changing. The grade and or existing water flow to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Displacement, period. And then in the regulations is where you would say, you need to demonstrate. By engineering analysis, or I guess you don't, yeah, I would put the engineering in. Any existing water flow neighborhood or neighborhood displacement. Unless demonstrated by engineering analysis that no additional water would be shed onto neighboring properties. Again, silent partner here, don't take me for anything.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, Chris, tell us what to do.
And then if they yell, we're giving them a number.
I like your statement of just now, Kim. My only, because this is exactly what we want to be regulating in this bylaw. So
Yeah.
if it's not doing it now, it should, and that's, so we should build that in. If we're just talking about changing the grade all by itself, triggering the applicability of the bylaw, that will capture all sorts of examples where another permit is not required. And I assume that you could change grade to your property in a way that would, your statement would apply to. And certainly not need a street permit, and certainly not need a building permit, certainly not need a ZBA, planning board, or conservation permit. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna say grade changes grade more than 2 inches, so you don't get, nuisance
well, I guess
ones, but I don't-
what I'm thinking is that we're adding in a new review concept of how these things are gonna get reviewed, if we're gonna
Yeah.
require that level of regulation. And what that would mean is you're gonna go do your, well, what I'd suggest it might mean is if you're gonna go do your review with Joe or with Tom or with the ZBA planning board or conservation commission, but if you don't have to go to them, there's a catch-all that we kind of need to build in. If you don't need to go to any of those places for another permit, you got to go to DPW and get them to sign off.
yeah, because
Does that
there's
make
some,
sense?
yeah, because there's like. Reviewing the plan itself is like, okay, this is gonna be a problem, the way you're setting up the grading. Has it been caught in the bylaw? That's the question. They're like, oh no, it doesn't, you know, you don't have to review this because it doesn't trigger the bylaws requirements, but it's like, I can tell there's gonna be a problem. Because you are adding a wall around the property, or you created a sharp grade. you know, someone, you know,
And
Yeah, so
I guess-
any entity, any land disturbing activity. Changing or impeding, or changing the grading. Changing, I would say changing or increasing the grading, anyways, changing the grading. And or,
Indoor existing water flow.
no, and or. Changing the grading and or impeding water flow. Or neighborhood displacement, however we say it. So basically, if you're gonna block it, or you're going to add the thing to have it direct it somewhere else, that's what we're trying to get at, right? Blocking it or moving it somewhere else. If you're doing any of that stuff, unless demonstrated by engineering analysis, that nothing is going to affect any neighbor or our drainage, then you're subject to this bylaw.
All right, well, and one other question from me. We're playing with the idea of having the performance standard here be. The need to make a demonstration that no additional water will be shed on the neighboring properties nor the public drainage system.
Mhm.
That's a new concept that we started talking about
Hmm.
20 minutes ago.
Mhm.
But in the existing draft of the bylaw, we already do have performance standards, I assume. Is this going above and beyond what the bylaw required an hour ago? In other words,
Yes, I
Because
think
we
it
want
is.
it all,
no,
not
we,
to.
well, right, because, previously, I think what the bylaw said is you gotta meet the Massachusetts stormwater handbook. So I guess I just wanna flag that we're now talking about being a lot more rigorous for every residential property in town.
And listen, what we heard from all the neighborhood meetings, August 8th flooding.
Yeah.
This is the nub of what
Yeah,
so many
yeah.
people want.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, but to that point. This standard would prohibit water from going off of all residential, no. Well,
redirect.
this would require someone proposing to regrade their lot to show that. No water would have left their property that day.
all right, maybe, I like the
Right.
idea of existing water flow,
Right.
because if that's the way it is,
Right.
then you don't have to stop it. Or you can't even, you don't have to redirect it, it's always been that way, you just have to maintain
Okay.
it being that way.
Status, maintain status quo.
Maintain
Yeah.
status quo.
Not prevent
So
every
that-
drop of water from ever
Right.
rolling off your property.
Correct, so you're not,
Because the next question to them is gonna, or everybody's gonna give me is, then why am I paying the stormwater assessment if no water ever leaves my property?
Yeah, right.
if you only go down.
So Chris,
Basically, oh, sorry.
you asked, like, how is it regular? What's the standard in other sections? So section 7.10.1 says the plan must demonstrate that the proposed activity will not result in adverse impacts to abutting properties, public infrastructure, or natural resources, and then it complies with performance standards and design criteria outlined in the stormwater regulations.
Okay. So. Yeah, all right. Do we like that better than? That?
No, this is really, there's something like. This says it.
Is that under plans? Is that under-
No, that's 7.10.1. Plants, yeah, erosion
Is that
control
plans?
plans, yeah.
Okay,
Basically, that the elevation can't change. It can't change more than,
Yeah,
Unless engineering shows it's existing.
yeah,
and,
yeah.
Like, we're not,
I
It was
imagine the
acceptable.
design, like, if they change the grades, they're doing yard drainage to collect the water and make sure it doesn't. That water that normally would go in that direction would be collected in their property and not redirected to their neighbors.
Yeah. yes,
Unless it,
unless it already did, so the neighbor can never complain like, it water flowed this way before and then. It still does,
Yes.
it's like, well, yes,
To
So
to
So they're
retain it
gonna
on
be
site,
infiltrating.
yeah,
yeah.
they'll,
New projects, new construction.
not everything, 1.5 inches.
Yeah,
Alright,
Yeah.
you guys,
But I like the idea that we're getting rid of the cubic yards.
yeah,
Just, so we're covering it with the words, but it clearly. It's covering a gap that existed
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
because we didn't have anything related to the grade
yeah,
or the movement of water.
yes,
So we're trying to figure out some words that will,
And I
you know,
remember,
allow the review to happen.
I remember at the beginning when we first started, a big thing was retaining the stormwater on site.
Yeah.
That was our big, I mean, that in many
But
instances,
this
retaining
says,
it on
like,
site.
yeah, this we can.
And I mentioned something that is interesting on MEPA regulations. Where they determine whether you're gonna file for an ENF or an EIR. There's a little trigger at the bottom that says, and the secretary can decide whether you're bumped into an EIR. And so so here are the thresholds, but then the secretary can kick you in the EIR if they feel it's necessary. Which is, I know it's a law, not a bylaw, but, I mean, a regulation, not a law, so.
So you want the public works director
Right.
or designate a.
Or, yeah,
have the
or if the
ultimate power.
DPW director decides you should be doing something, then you shall.
Right. So is the analogy to this situation that if they don't need another permit, they would go to apply to you? What?
Right, yeah. So, in that case, like, they would already be in a set rules that they go through me, but anyway, right? And then it gets triggered.
Okay.
So,
Could we ask a couple people to finesse the language on? I think we're all agreeing on a concept,
yeah,
but getting the exact wording. Is this a Kim and Chris?
I like Kim's draft already.
You got it covered?
Stormwater lit.
Thanks, just what I always wanted, although I can't seem to type tonight.
yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
And you have.
So I think that would,
Land disturbing activity that results in an adverse impacts to abutting properties, public infrastructure or natural resources, such as changing grading or existing water flow or neighborhood displacement.
I worry that
Joe has this answer. Go.
adverse impacts is too subjective to be a trigger under this section of the bylaw, and I would suggest that we just start the bullet. Change in grading or existing water flow.
Cause I wanted to capture whether you're adding stuff or if you're putting up a wall.
Yes.
So even if you're not bringing fill in, if you're putting up a retaining wall that now
obstructing,
obstructs how the water would come off your property. In terms of, it's now gonna go down your front lawn instead of over to your side yard where there's actual wetlands or something down there to take it.
No, I want it to be broad.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be, it has to be objectively triggered or not. So that we're not having,
Too many of these.
a neighbor running in and saying they didn't apply for a permit. They're having, what they did had adverse impacts on my property, and we're debating whether that is true or not.
Right.
So I would, how about change in grading or existing water flow that results in additional water shedding onto neighboring properties or the public drainage system. So,
yeah, like,
Does it
when
have
you
to
say
be
obstruct or
neighboring properties?
redirect.
Because you have, they built these houses up on the hill and now, it's all coming down here, but what if you're not a direct abutter?
Right. Well, neighbor, you're right.
Well, it would be going.
Joe, you got
across
your
a
hand up?
neighbor. Right,
My hand, actually, my hand's up for a different
right,
thing.
but if you
I'll take it down.
redirect or obstruct and it goes across one neighbor and then, the person downstream gets impacted, then. It's still.
Okay.
Obstructing, right?
Does it have to be land disturbance? Can just be land disturbance activity, could just be activities such as.
it can't be such as, we need to eliminate such as.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
could
just make
it just be activities that change, that create a change in grading or existing water flow?
I think it could be just capital C, start the bullet with change.
Okay. And,
Does that sound right?
change, yeah, yes, I like that.
And that results in
Maybe just place it in public drainage.
additional water.
I think we should say surface water too, because we're gonna get people saying the groundwater's now
Good.
changed.
Yep.
Oh, okay, just surface.
Yeah,
Additional surface water doing what, to what properties, and we shouldn't say abutting.
Being
Existing surface
shed
water
onto.
Neighboring properties?
Yeah,
Other properties.
yeah, and we're right, because
Adjacent.
we sidestep the just a proximity, but
Right.
not.
Other properties,
Touching.
public infrastructure or natural resources.
So like if it goes into the street and then to the neighbor across the street.
It's like when you
Yeah.
request a certified abutters list, and it's like abutters to abutters within 300 feet.
If the water goes to the butters within 300 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
changing grading or existing water flow that results in additional surface water being shed onto other
So
properties.
what's
public
additional
infrastructure.
mean though?
Any more than current. Before you start doing the work. Now, that is gonna require. That establishes a burden of proof that we will have a hard time with. Because
So what if it's lessening it?
then you don't trigger the.
Bylaw.
The bylaw.
Yeah,
But what if there's a wetland that's now starving of water because you went and changed it, now there's less?
You
You
could
change
do that
it.
under your existing jurisdiction, right?
If it's in our jurisdiction,
well, if the
But if
wetlands
it
right next
affects-
door, they'd have to
but if it
go.
affects our wetland, even though it's further away than our jurisdiction,
That might be
then
hard
we
to figure
still
out,
have
though.
say over it.
It can't
Yeah.
have both ways.
Well, yeah,
that's gonna be hard to figure
but
out.
it kind of,
Yeah.
Look,
the
we're trying to get
exception
all the time
proves
to
the
take down all
rules.
the trees down. What do you want?
I want it all.
Me too, but,
All right,
so changing grading or existing water flow. Instead of saying that, was that resulting in additional surface water instead of that results? That's crazy. Resulting in additional surface water being shed onto other properties, public infrastructure or natural resources.
because we don't
Wait,
let
are we-
people tie into the town drain system.
yeah, we
because
call
want the
public,
water
I mean,
flow.
public drain system, that's
Just saying.
public infrastructure, right? But
Yeah.
people just mean that's, is like streets. Or a town park, I mean, is that sufficient?
Public
I
infrastructure?
think that's.
Right.
I think it's fine.
encompassing,
I think
yeah.
I don't think we can dumb
Okay.
it down that much.
All
I
right,
like it.
Yeah, I do too.
Great.
Chris, aren't these meetings interesting?
I love them.
So
Yeah.
that, then we can delete
No.
second.
Drafting
But
bylaws
they-
is way more fun with a group of people live than it is sitting at my desk
And
all
Oh.
afternoon.
And
you sit
pouring
in on
myself
like
to
the
tears.
tree.
the bullet
tree
point
meetings
above,
and Stuff too.
What's that?
You sit in on
We
the tree
delete.
bylaw.
We
meetings.
get rid of the-
Yet.
750 cubic yards. per
So we
minute.
getting
We're
rid
gonna
of the
be more fun,
750?
trust me.
The land disturbance
250?
750?
I think that's my understanding of what we just agreed to.
So we agreed, the
We're
change in
going
grading and
qualitative.
getting rid of land disturbance involving the addition of,
Right,
right?
So no more,
We didn't have it
No, no.
before.
No, because there's a
Right.
second component to that first bullet, which is
So we're-
or the construction or alteration of drainage systems.
So
We want to keep that, I think.
land disturbance activity involving the addition, movement or removal of, and we want to change it from 750 to 250 cubic
Well,
yards of
do we-
soil?
I thought we were-
or we could just.
no more,
I
I
thought
think
we
we're getting,
no
getting
more.
rid of it except for this part.
Yeah.
That last-
We're
after
covered
the
with
comma.
0.3.
Can we move what's after the comma down here?
Talking about-
What comma, where? So bullet 2
Or
or
the-
3?
Bullet 2. after
Bullet
the
2.
comma.
Or
After the
construction.
comma.
It always struck me as independent, the construction or alteration of drainage system struck me as independent of the 750 threshold, like it was like
Yeah.
sort of two different things sandwiched together. I might just leave it as its own bullet point.
So land disturbance involving the addition, movement, or removal of more than
250.
250 cubic yards of soil or the construction or alteration of drainage system.
So I think what you're doing is deleting everything in the second bullet. Up and prior to, sorry. From here to here. Or here, and then just capitalizing the. That sound right?
So the construction and alteration of drainage
Systems.
systems.
Okay.
So, is that gonna include, say, if somebody has a sump pump discharging to our drainage system, it's gonna be subject to the bylaw because they're altering or connecting. to
So I'm
our
deleting
drainage
all
system.
this, just leaving
Yeah.
construction or alteration of drainage system?
Yes,
I think so. Unless we don't think that's important, I don't wanna overcomplicate things, but does anybody just construct a drainage system?
I mean, I suppose. if
well,
that's
if
what
they
they're trying to
put.
drain,
Actually,
if they
yes.
put into if they put into
That
municipal.
did happen.
That
The
one
just-
time.
The Just Salad property on Highland Avenue, before they got a permit or approvals to put Just Salad in, they went in and ripped up the parking lot and put in a huge underground storage tank, which didn't trigger anything. So yes, people do drainage systems without approvals.
All right.
Yeah, my concern, my hope is that if there is a sump pump discharge that we can start permitting more efficiently. You know, so we can create regulations on how to discharge to the town's drainage system. Right now, it's kind of just a policy.
Should we be putting a drainage and or infiltration systems? Not just drainage?
Well, infiltration system is a drainage system in some respects.
It is. It is. But when I think of drainage, I think of something getting carried away from me, not necessarily infiltrating into the ground. I guess, that's just me. I think
Yeah.
of conveyance more than soaking it in.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be conveyance.
Technically, I know that now, but back before I worked for the DPW, I had no clue.
So this bullet, like, I just wanted to see, what is it actually triggering though? Construction or alteration of drainage systems. So our drainage system is very important that they get things permitted.
Yeah, I think Joe was saying like in terms of like if you buy a lot of land and before you get permitted for the building permit, you take what the parking lot has been ripped up, it's done.
Yeah,
And you have open dirt and you just plunk in a
drainage system.
tank, yeah.
Why did they do that? I mean, who's
Does that keep an eye on illicit?
Why ask why? Just accept it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, like
Tom, I think you can cover sump pumps under this.
yeah, that's what I'm hoping
Yeah.
that's the intention.
So under a
Yeah,
drainage
but I
system.
just wanna
do
make sure
put the word
that
sump pump?
anybody who wants to do a drainage system, like a rain garden on their property, that they don't necessarily have to go through a permit. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
I think some of this we can decide, you know. Some of it will be captured in the regulation, and some of it we will make judgments on some of this stuff. And there will be areas where we'll be able to say, we'll be able to make a judgment and say, no, it doesn't apply to you. When it's my
Construction or
work.
alteration of underground drainage?
no,
No, okay. I'm just making sure.
yeah. No, but I do think in one sense it is important to have this in there because if people are starting to get credit for stormwater management. Oh, yeah, no, I put this like wonderful,
Should I put in there
Forest.
including sump pumps? Should I say comma including sump pumps?
including some pump connections to, well, including towns. I don't know, maybe it's just vague enough that we can make sure.
I like vague.
I like it like it is now,
Okay,
Yeah,
we're leaving it as is right now, moving on,
Yeah, all
okay.
right.
right?
It's almost
Um,
9 o'clock, so I just wanna put a time check here on everybody. I'm not sure. Where was I?
We're at
7.9, yeah,
I don't think Kevin's gonna close it
Is
down.
the. I
7.9, hold on,
I
I'm
can
sorry.
sense it.
Well, I wonder if before we better be sure we all know what our meetings are.
Our
We
next
may-
meeting is on June 17th,
Okay.
it's Tuesday.
a week from, yeah, a week from Tuesday.
And
Yay, it's not just me.
So so a week from,
Are you
a
joining
week
us?
from yesterday, so no, from today, tomorrow. Today's Monday.
Okay.
A week from tomorrow.
No, it's perfectly clear.
I will take your word for it.
June 17th
Tuesday.
and June 24th is our next two
Wait.
meetings.
So any of the Wednesday
no,
meetings you
nothing.
have in your
6:25.
schedule.
Any Wednesday meetings that I sent out inadvertently, please ignore my stupidity
Yeah,
and my
Tuesday. I had Tuesday.
my quick enter, huh?
The 25th I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
it's
so
select
I-
board,
Select board.
Tuesday, then.
Oh, so 25th, I'm sorry.
25th, yeah.
24th was the select board, 25th is us.
No, I
No,
had
17
25.
and 25.
Okay, just call me,
All right.
call me.
I'll
Give me
call you,
24
Deb.
hours notice.
I'll call you, Deb.
Thank you, sir.
I just have a quick question, with relating back to it'll be really quick, with the 4,000, 4,000 less permeable, for the less
Yeah.
permeable, and over 4,000. Impermeable.
Yeah.
Both impermeable, is that, did we give that threshold in the plans? I'm trying to remember. So we're still
Alright.
consistent with that?
Yeah, on section 710, I don't remember.
Okay, well, I guess we'll get to it.
There are some sections that I'm
I
not
can't,
sure.
I'm trying to remember. Kim will know.
Yeah, it's in there, cause, yeah, she kept it under the, standard infiltration method. I think we need to look at that section.
So we still have that in there, that threshold.
Yeah,
Kim would do what?
Okay.
What is Kim doing? I'm sorry.
no, the 4,000
You know
square feet
everything.
of impervious
Thank
area.
you. Oh, please say, don't say that out loud, never again.
Lines
So-
here, we're disintegrating.
Yes. Does anyone wish to make a motion? to adjourn?
Oh, can we hold on? Can I?
Oh,
just throw
yeah,
in-
yeah.
So, after last meeting, I knew that, Chris and Tom were going to be meeting to discuss a few things. I still think that there's some clarity needed in the permitting authority section. So I wrote a proposal and sent it just to Tom and Chris, but I think either I didn't send it right and they may not have got it, or they may simply not have had time to look at it. Without bringing up that whole topic tonight, I'm wondering, is it possible if I could resend that email to Kim and distribute it to all the other members? I think what I wrote may provide some good clarity to the bylaw as far as authorities having jurisdiction and how that all happens.
Yes,
Yeah,
send it to me.
Because that's an important issue that we're yet to wrestle to the ground, so.
Yes,
If you've got
send it
the
to me.
answer, we'll take it.
Okay.
And I
Is that okay?
apologize, Joe.
Is that okay, Chris, that we do it that way?
Yeah. That sounds
Okay.
great.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll ever tell you to please send him more emails. Ever.
Yeah, well, Chris and I didn't get a chance to meet up after the last meeting, but that was like
Well,
one
what have you
thing.
been doing?
I know.
Totally missed that. He's leaving Bob.
You have the date yet for the
I sent him to him.
Select board?
select board president?
Not yet.
So
I was
were you
making
gonna
it
still
up
try to
by
put the
hand.
permits and the applicability
Meeting
together?
presentation, select board, do we still want to get?
We
the
haven't, yeah,
25th?
we haven't defined if we're
Because the
gonna be done with
750
this.
is in
And
there.
to be honest with
I'll
you,
still
depending on how much,
Plugging away and.
yeah, depending on how much you
Thank you,
guys get
Chris.
through, I don't even know if you're gonna be ready for October.
We're optimistic.
We are being optimistic right now, but
We are
unless you
meeting
guys
3 times
make,
in June.
So we'll get through June and
Right.
we'll have 2 more meetings this month, but.
I know.
And what days are those, Tim?
And we wanted to do our stormwater master plan presentation.
The
Select board
master,
first.
Not stormwater, the flood.
What?
Oh,
Right,
Oh, yeah.
flood master, stormwater.
Yeah, well,
whatever,
flood-
our
flood
planning-
study
Our
and-
planning
yeah.
study.
Yeah,
Do you know when that'll be ready?
it's been done forever. The flood
Well,
study.
yeah, there's
I thought there was
some
a new-
pieces that are remaining.
okay.
There's some pieces that are remaining, but,
Oh,
but, and that's to go before the select board to say, here's our.
Bring 'em up.
Sorry, ignore me.
So it will be, it won't be June 24th meeting, it'll be probably the July meeting,
Okay.
so.
You meeting on the
share
4th
that
of
with
July?
this group at some point?
Yes, so, we have a couple more things to hash out with Beta and. And talk, internally before we do the slides, get the slides ready, so.
I mean, we did make progress tonight, so kudos to you guys. Job well done. And we are on section 7.9.
Right, that's a huge part to what we did tonight, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and again, we're going over, we have the majority of it drafted, it's just tweaking and fixing the language, I think that's a much better place than having to figure out the words that are in there. I'd rather take away than add stuff.
Do you think it's realistic to get through the remainder of the legal comments next meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got, I had
Just
Just-
comment.
Just 20 more.
three
No more comments.
3 pages of comments, and I've got one left, but I think it's the tail. I can fly through them.
Awesome.
Okay. And then we'll take after we get through the legal comments, we'll have to go through the comments that Tom put in as well.
Yeah.
I think
And,
we touched base on some of them.
Okay. but we need to do a final read through of the whole
Yeah.
thing from start to finish to make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
And memorize it.
In the whole.
We should get beanbag chairs and just
Different
popcorn and you can read to us.
I'm
Kim.
hoping somebody else is, well, I was gonna say, I'm hoping someone else is
And
gonna.
memorize it.
And then,
We-
and
we
then to
should-
see if we met all our purposes.
If we've met all the purpose, I mean, right now, that third bullet point, I think, helped meet the purpose of water quantity. Which we
Yeah,
didn't have before,
yeah.
the rest is all more water quality, so I think that is being achieved. And then we never really did go over the definitions, but until we finish the draft, I don't wanna make sure we have all the definitions, only because I wanna be able to go through the draft and search to make sure they actually appear in the document after we finish.
I think definitions is good to do the last.
Thank you.
Right, so you
That's
can
what I
get
said.
Hmm.
That's what we
agree.
had it as our
I agree.
last item. So anyway, so there is that. Does anybody have a motion for adjournment this evening?
I move to adjourn.
Josh moves to adjourn.
I'll
Second
Second.
that.
And all right.
Deb
Roll call.
seconds. Roll call.
John Salem,
Yes.
Josh Levy.
Yes.
Sue Barber,
Yes.
Tom Ryder,
Yes.
Deb Anderson,
Mhm.
Joe Ponda.
Yes.
All right, and the chair votes yes, we're adjourned.
Okay,
Time to-
thank you very much. Thank you, Joe, for all your input tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it much. Check this out.
I'll
Thank
call
you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
I'll call you.
I'm starting.
So do you have any
interviewing
other-
I sent that thing to you,
for
Kim.
Water,
birthdays.
Thank you, Joe.
This
I
going
read
this is the big one for
I listened
now.
to the minutes.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
I mean, it sounded like.
Other
everything
towns
happened
are
at
wrestling
7
with
We had
Same thing.
75 applicants.
Everybody is.
And I'm interviewing 6 of them on Thursday.
Conservation.